Hey, what's up guys? The Explanation Pro is here. Today, I'll explain a comedy sci-fi movie, Paul. Spoilers incoming! The story begins in a setting in Moorcroft, Wyoming, 1947. Tara, a little girl, has a dog named Paul. One quiet night, for an unknown reason, Paul wants to go outside. Tara opens the door and tells Paul not to be outside too long. Paul, being a bubbly dog, rushes out of the house and goes outside. Suddenly, the wind starts to become more aggressive. A windmill turns the opposite way and a bright yellow light starts to appear from the sky. Tara, being a protective owner, goes to check on Paul and sees the bright yellow light. She looks up and sees a spaceship coming hastily from the sky and crashes into Paul. After 60 years, two sci-fi geeks from England take a pilgrimage to America's UFO heartland. Graham and Clyde go to a Comic-Con in San Diego for a tour and meet their idol, Adam Shadowchild, who wrote the Venusian Pangenesis, Jupiter Praxis, Jenny Star Pepper, Huge White Gibbon, and The Night of the Moths. Both of them are having a great time by meeting their favorite author and participating in different events. Clive is an author himself, while Graham is an artist and illustrator. After the Comic-Con, both of them go to their hotel and rent an RV. They are planning to tour all of America's most famous UFO hotspots. They are planning to go to Area 51 and the Black Mailbox in Nevada, then down to Camp Verde, Apache Junction, and then to Roswell, New Mexico for the site of the famous crash in 1947. These places are all known for their stories about the UFO and alien sightings. The next morning, together with their RV, Clive and Graham start their tour to all America's most famous UFO hotspots. They first head to Vasquez Rocks, California, then into Area 51 in Nevada. They stop into a small restaurant that is inspired by aliens for a quick break and snacks. The owner is an avid believer of UFOs and aliens too. When the owner asks them, "Makes you think, doesn't it? Where is everybody?" Clive and Graham look at each other and think about the question. The owner then scares them, which diverts the topic. Clive goes to the bathroom and the owner goes to the back to refill their tea, leaving Graham alone. After a while, two men looking not very friendly enter the restaurant, telling each other a joke. Graham starts laughing with them. The men find it rude. Graham notices and starts to distract himself. Clive arrives from the bathroom and Graham whispers to him about the gentleman, both the men still being in place about what Graham asked the owner if the restaurant is a gay bar, giving Clive a hint of what's going on. They quickly left the place. While starting their RV, Clive is panicking and makes him reverse, hitting something from the back. It's the gentleman's truck, leaving a dent and an impression. Graham and Clive continue their tour and arrive at the Black Mailbox. They took wonderful pictures with their camera along the way for memories. Unfortunately, they spot a car light nearing them, thinking that it is the men back from the restaurant. They quickly hop in their RV and drive off. The car is catching up to them. They try to drive faster but the car overtakes them. They get relieved when they see the car is different from the truck of the men back at the restaurant. Subsequently, the car starts to crash and splay in front of them. They stop and go to check if the driver's okay. They notice the driver's seat door open and nobody is inside. Clueless to what to do, they try to call 911. But a voice told them not to. Oblivious to the voice, they turn around to see someone in the dark. It slowly comes out of the shadows and reveals a green creature. In other words, an alien! Surprisingly, the alien is smoking. Astonished by the alien, Clive faints on the ground. Graham is just standing there with his mouth wide open, looking dumbfounded. The alien introduces himself as Paul and tells Graham that he needs their help. Paul tells him that he might die on this road if they don't help him. Graham, still being in shock, agrees, and they carry Clive into the RV. Paul then notices that Clive peed his pants. After getting themselves inside the RV, Paul tells Graham to drive north. Meanwhile, a car stops in a place where Paul's car crashed. Zoyle, an agent from the government, investigates the area and sees a small pond of liquid. After investigating, he realizes it was pee. A woman starts to ask Zoyle from a walkie-talkie in his car, asking him about the situation. Zoyle tells her that the person they are looking for is hitchhiking. The woman tells Zoyle that she has two agents, 75 clicks north from where he is, and will tell them to set a roadblock. Finally, Clive wakes up and sees the alien in the passenger seat. Clive slowly walks towards them and strangles Paul. Clive asks him what he is while Graham keeps telling him that Paul is friendly and it's fine. After a while, they bump into a roadblock. Paul disappears without notice and the agents start to examine inside of the RV. But to their dismay, they find nothing suspicious. Paul then reappears in front of the RV, making Graham and Clive startled. Paul explains that he can turn invisible when he holds his breath, which amazes Graham and Clive. Clive still can't believe Paul exists, so he releases an outburst at Graham, telling him that they could be arrested for accommodating a fugitive. Not long after, Zoyle appears with the two agents assigned for the roadblocks. Zoyle asks the agents what are their findings in the RV, and the agents mention the peed pants, which interests Zoyle. Paul, Clive, and Graham are just inside the RV, chilling, when a bird hits the window of the RV, making them scream in panic. They stop the RV and check what's the situation. Paul starts to do something with the bird in his hands. He closes his eyes and holds the bird with both hands. After a while, the bird comes back to life. Unfortunately, he eats it. That night, they decide to just crash in a place for a while and rest. Suddenly, a girl knocks on their RV's door. She introduces herself as Ruth and tells them about the rent and that she needs an ID to hold onto. Graham seems to be dumbfounded by the girl's appearance, but Clive seems to be covetous. The next morning, the three of them are peacefully sleeping in the RV when they hear a knock coming from outside. Paul hides in the bathroom, while Graham opens the door to find Ruth. Ruth politely asks them if she can come in. Ruth asks the men if they are men of God, and they tell her that they are men of science. Ruth starts to tell them some things about how the world was created. Paul, who was inside the bathroom, disagrees, making Ruth far-fetched. She starts asking Paul to explain how people in the universe are created. Ruth is now annoying Paul. Being a species who is not known to be a creation of God, he tells her irritatingly that it is from the culmination of billions of years of development across countless species. Paul steps out of the bathroom and shows himself to Ruth. Ruth, like Clive, faints at the sight of Paul. They decide to take Ruth with them in fear of telling others about the existence of Paul. But they still have one problem: Clive's passport. Paul turns invisible and goes to Ruth's home to find Clive's passport. He turns visible again, and to his dismay, Ruth's father sees him. Her father starts to get his shotgun and tries to shoot Paul, but luckily, Paul gets into the RV safely. Finally, Ruth wakes up and calls Paul a demon. Paul gets tired of Ruth's rambling and places his hand on Ruth's forehead, transferring his collective knowledge and experiences to her. At the same time, Ruth's father calls 911 to report what happened. The government shows up and asks for Ruth's picture and the telephone number that Ruth might call. Ruth's father decides to take things into his own hands. He wants to find Ruth himself. Now, knowing that her belief in fate was a lie, Ruth cannot accept the truth and starts to leave the RV. Graham starts to explain to her that Paul needs their help, and luckily, she decides to stay. On the other hand, Paul asks Clive why he is being very unhappy and sarcastic about everything that is happening. Clive explains that he is jealous of everyone. He feels out of place because he thinks he blew it when he first met Paul. Ruth, Clive, Graham, and Paul stop at a bar. Ruth suggests that she calls her father and tell him that she is fine to avoid her father from calling the police. Little did she know, her father already did. She calls her father and Zoel answers the phone. Zoel asks her where she is, but she refuses to disclose this information. Ruth then realizes that they are tracking her location, so she quickly goes back to Graham. Unfortunately, she bumps into two men. Coincidentally, those men are the men that Clive and Graham bumped into before at the restaurant. Ruth kicks the men, releasing her, and they all come back fast to the RV. The men catch up, but Paul appears in front of them, making both of them faint. All of them decide to camp out for the night, and finally, Paul explains to them what is happening. Apparently, he already told the government all he knows about their species. The only thing left to offer was his abilities. In order for them to cultivate his abilities, they need to cut his brain out. Luckily, he finds a friend inside the facility and manages to call for help on his planet. But the government moves his procedure forward for a day, which wrecks his plans. He steals one of the agent's car keys and drives off. The next morning is an unfortunate one. They have to pass over the town with many people in order for them to get back to the RV. They disguise Paul and wait in a shop while Graham brings the RV to them. One of the agents sees him inside the shop and begins to shoot them. They run away, and luckily, they arrive at the RV safe. They drive away and stop in a store to buy fireworks Paul has been asking them. At the same time, the agents figure out where Paul and the others are heading and try to meet them there. Paul and the others stop in a house where an old lady lives. Paul then calls her Tara and apologizes for killing his dog. Tara is glad to see him again. Unfortunately, the government spots them. Everything is chaos inside. Tara forgets to turn off the stove and one of the agents fires his gun. The house explodes. Woefully, Zoel survives. The woman in Zoel's walkie-talkie asks the status of the mission, and upon hearing the situation, she declares to bring out the big guns. Paul, Tara, and the others go into their last destination in the rendezvous. They set off a signal and wait. Eventually, eerie orange lights show up over the surrounding trees, and everyone believes that it's Paul's race. However, it is an army helicopter with a big guy inside. The big guy is about to shoot them when Zoel arrives and reveals that he was Paul's inside contact who helps him to escape. The big guy shoots Zoel in the shoulder, but Tara punches her in the face, knocking her down. Ruth's father appears and shoots Graham in his chest. Paul did the most dangerous but bravest thing yet. He tries to heal Graham and succeeds. The big guy wakes up and is about to shoot her gun, but the spaceship that lands on the ground squashes her. Paul's backups are here. Paul bids his thank you and farewell to everybody. He also takes Tara with him for a new life. 2 years later, Graham, Clive, and Ruth are seen again at the comic convention promoting their new mega successful comic book, Paul, that wins an award. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.